Welcome to the Diamond Show. Hello, world. How you doing? I missed you last week, and I apologize for not being here last week. Had a lot going on, a lot of unexpected events coming up, and I just didn't have the time to sit down and have an interview with anyone. And so I apologize for that. We're back. After today, we will have only 2 more episodes left of season 2, and I've already got those guests lined up, and I'm so excited for that. But not only that, I'm very excited for this episode. And this has been something I've been planning for a long time. And I just have now got to reach out to them and actually get things going. So everyone, please welcome to the show, Mr. Jim Harris. Woohoo! Yes, sir. First off, Mr. Harris, Jim, as we talked about before,
Yes,
thank you for being on the show. And man, how's life treating you right now? I know we've got a lot going on, but how's life treating you, Mr. Harris?
Well, there's a lot going on for me too. My real job these days with the Game and Fish Commission here in Little Rock, but I try to blend that and still keep up with all things Razorback and all that. So just trying to get through here as we move 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving.
Yes, sir.
After that, it's just careening down the hill to the end of the year.
Jim, for the listeners that might not know who you are, just to give them a brief overview who they're listening to, could just give them some facts about yourself, where you're from and what you're doing right now, and just some things you've been able to do to help you get where you are today.
Yeah, well, I'm a native of Pine Bluff. I'm been around. If you want to talk, are we talking from a sports point of view, or just all professions?
Everything.
Okay, because I've been in newspapers since I was probably in high school, actually, but I was sort of born for that, and I worked for the Pine Bluff Commercial out of college. I've worked for the Arkansas Gazette for several years after that, worked in Northwest Arkansas, both for the Gazette and for the Fayetteville paper there. I came back home to Little Rock. I've worked in probably every avenue of newspapers other than the high profile society wedding pages. That's probably the only thing I haven't done. And I probably did a little bit of that at Pine Bluff, but I worked for Arkansas Business for several years, 7 or so years. I worked in entertainment writing for the Arkansas Times. I went back to sports and started Arkansas Sports 360 in 2007. That was a website, so it was Arkansas360.com. We also had a monthly magazine for a while there. We tried a lot of different things to try to talk to the Central Arkansas sports fan, kind of branched that out with a big website for a while that frankly was maybe a little bit of its time. We didn't quite grab the advertising segment that we needed to keep it I freelanced for a lot of years with some sports and other writing, trucking. I can talk trucking if you want to. And then I joined the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. I've always had some outdoors in my background anyway, so but I worked for them since 2016. And all that while, the last decade or so more, contributed to Channel 11, KTHV here in Little Rock. I'm on the Hogzone every Saturday night. I do football columns for them, and I write sports stuff freelance for some other sites too, like Best of Arkansas Sports.com, I believe is its URL. So stay busy. And in this business, you pretty well have to. The newspaper industry has changed a lot. A lot of my friends are out of it now, just like I am. We're kind of on more of a PR side for full-time jobs. That's kind of what my job here is at the Game and Fish Commission. I do our magazine, which comes out 6 times a year, plus a ton of other writing about outdoors, hunting, fishing, and everything else that we do.
I appreciate that. And
yeah, I think I took up the whole show.
No, and I say that, I love that, because sometimes, not to throw any shade at anyone, I ask that question, they give me like a couple things and that's it. And I like my listeners, of course, this is for them to get to know you guys, for you guys to share your story and have your voices heard and have your stories shared. But it's also for them to understand that this is like a conversation. This isn't an interview. This is a conversation. So that right there is like the most important thing ever for you to put out as much as you can. And so I really do appreciate that. And I will start off with your life story, but I want to get to two questions that are kind of off topic, but are still really intriguing for me. And my first one is, I'm secured about your work from talking about Razorback football. In the state of Arkansas, of course, a huge devoted Hog fan. And I think what we're seeing now is just so much adversity with this team. And I like to say that, it's crazy. And I saw a tweet the other day that in 2019, we were getting ready to play LSU. LSU was 43.5-point favorites against us. Mm-hmm. And now we're 3.5-point favorites. And I like to credit that to so many different things. But my question for you is, how amazing has it been to see Sam Pittman and his crew change? I would say probably the worst Power 5 program over the last 2 years. And, now we're bowling and probably going to be, 7-win team. How amazing as a fan and as a writer to see what Sam Pittman and his crew has done so quickly.
Well, in my lifetime, I've never seen Arkansas any lower than it was under Chad Morris. The only other time that could compare, in even if you want to call it post World War II, if that's modern, I'm not sure it is, but I've gone back and watched football in the 50s, films of it, and I'm not sure it's really modern. But the only thing Arkansas can compare to was in the early 1950s, they went 2-8, 5-5, and 2-8 with a guy who was out of his element, not unlike Chad Morris was when he was the head coach here, but really the right coach, and at that time was Bowden Wyatt. This time it's Sam Pittman, changes the culture, and I think I know that it could be done. So I'm not sitting here saying I never thought this was possible. I just thought that if the right guy was in place, first of all, he'd have to change the culture, which Sam Pittman did. The good news is he's been here before. Yeah. He knew our culture. Mm-hmm. He knew what can win. He was part of Bielema's building. If you recall, Arkansas went 0-8 in the SEC under Brett Bielema the first year, and then turned that around to where they were 5-3 in the SEC in Sam's last year with Brett, which was 2015. So Sam's been a part of pulling them from near depths. I mean, we probably thought the John L. Smith era that one year,
which is what I wanted to get to as well.
Yeah. Well, could that be as deep as it could go? Well, we found out 4 years later, or a little longer than that. I guess we found out 6 years later. No, that's not as far as it can fall. It can fall to 0-16 over a 2-year period, 4-20. So to come in there, and obviously they had to get some more talent. There was some good players on hand, and Chad did bring in a handful of great players, or at least two for sure. KJ Jefferson, who I think succeeded every high school guru's prediction of how good he would be as a quarterback. So you have to have a great quarterback in the SEC. And then they had a great safety in Jalen Catalan. And if you have a great safety, you can build your defense around it. Now everybody is seeing what happens to the style of defense they want to play when
he's not
either
there.
They don't have that great player, or they're filling in with a little used sophomore now playing Catalan. I mean, one guy can make a difference. You know the game. You know that we're seeing some of that. But anybody that thinks we're having adversity now, just try to remember 2 years ago. That's still not the bottom. I mean, there are teams that have gone 0-11 or 0-12. We're about as close to that as you could do it. And now, as you point out, we're Sam Pittman's built them to where they're at least bowling. They have 3 more games to go. 2 of them are, to me, very winnable games. And it's been, I don't know how else to put it, except that it's certainly he's exceeded most people's expectations. I just don't want it to sound like I didn't think it could be done. It just had to be the right guy.
And I don't want to say that I didn't think it could be done either. It was so much that happened, you know. First of all, Pittman wasn't our number one guy. We went after other guys before Pittman. I didn't think that everyone knew he didn't have any head coaching experience, but we knew that he loved this program, and then he showed that when he first got interviewed, literally crying on stage, being interviewed as the head coach. And I also think that a lot of mentor to his help is his coordinators. He did a great job with his coordinators. Barry Odom, you know, got out of Mizzou, and you know, a lot of testimony was he's going to leave after 1 year, especially what he did to return one of our defense that was really good last year, that was atrocious the year before, and we made him one of the highest paid coordinators. You know, Kendall Browse, you know, of course, is now being linked to head coaching jobs, but he's made a name for himself. I would say here, I think he's made a name for himself, but he's kind of cemented himself that he could be a top guy.
Yeah, right.
And it's just crazy how quickly it's been. And I even tell my mom is, you know, it's crazy. I think that we could have won. We could have beat Georgia. I mean, excuse me, we could have beat Ole Miss and Auburn. You know, the Auburn game wasn't our best performance. A lot of different things went in. We only lost to Ole Miss by 1 point. But I just think it's so crazy that we were just so bad just a couple years ago, and now I think we can, if we continue to grow talent like we are, I think we could be a 2 or 3 team in the West. So, and I just think it's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun as a Hog fan.
It is. And that's a good goal to have. I think you do have to be realistic. Our fan base and SEC fan bases in general aren't very realistic. I mean, right now you're still not overtaking Alabama or something like that on a year-to-year basis, not as long as Nick Saban's there. You know, this isn't 2002 or whatever. I mean, where I think Arkansas won the West, or tied other teams, but represented the SEC in the championship game, or represented the West in the championship game. 2006. I mean, Arkansas had these little 4-year spurts. A lot of them were brought on by having good in-state players like Matt Jones or Darren McFadden that were almost once in a generation type players. And that's been Arkansas's, you know, jump up to the top level, and then maybe down to not mediocrity. I still don't think it's bad to be 500 in the SEC.
I don't either, especially in the West.
Yeah. I don't think you want to be that every year, but again, that beats 0-8, you know, 2 years in a row. So you have a little area where you want to be, you want to have some realism about you as far as what your expectations are playing in the SEC. Do we want to go back to a league that only 2 or 3 teams a year are any good at, which is kind of what the Southwest Conference was sort of like? I don't think you really want to do that. I think the Big 12 is what the Southwest Conference kind of was at one time. You want that. I think you want to compete with the best, and if a Darren McFadden comes around again, it gives you a chance to beat anybody, or it, you know, I mean, and as you pointed out, except for the Georgia game this year, Arkansas has not been, you know, categorically not belonging on the field with anybody else they played. Yeah. That's a great step in the right direction. Go back 2 years ago, we didn't belong on the field with
anyone
teams we played.
And I appreciate that. And my next question, and then I want to get to you, because that is what we're here for. But I was just so intrigued to talk to you. And this is how we kind of got connected. I'm a great friend of Coach Buck James, and he's just one of a kind. He's truly one of the nicest people I ever met. I know you guys have a strong relationship and friendship, and you guys have known each other for years. And so talk about that, because he watches as much as he can, and I know he's going to be excited once I tell him that you'll be with me today. But just talk about your relationship. How did you guys meet? And just talk about Coach James as well, man.
Well, first of all, Buck and my brother, friends from Pine Bluff, they're in about the same age group. My brother was a year ahead of him and went to Jefferson Preparatory Academy, where Buck played his high school football. Buck was part of I mean, if you can imagine this, there was only 18 kids in their senior class. So they were playing Class A football.
Yeah.
But I bet every boy or every male in that class, maybe except one, was on the football team. All were really good to great, and they won 1981 Class A state championship, which I covered Jefferson Prep when I was at the Pine Bluff Commercial. I'd mentioned that I worked out of college. Part of my coverage, I did cover the Pine Bluff Zebras too, kind of balanced them both at the same time. But I covered Jefferson Prep through that run of 1980 and 81 when Chuck Andrews was their head coach. Buck was a junior and then a senior. They went up against Danville in 1980. Former Razorback quarterback Brad Taylor was the quarterback at Danville. Class A school, man, you could tell how good he was even at that level. And they were on the short end of that game in the state champions in the state playoffs, like 42-0. But it really inspired those juniors to come back the next year. Buck and all his teammates, they beat Danville, defending state champions, in the playoffs, and went on to win it. So Buck and I go back all the way to pretty much me covering him then. There's 5 or 6 years age difference between us, but just watching him through all the stops he's had as a coach, I guess first as a player in the AIC or that league, I think he went to Monticello. So, but then he went on to coaching, and everywhere he's gone, he's won. I mean, he's taken over some programs that were, kind of at the definitely struggling, and then was winning state championships or taking them to state champions like Camden Fairview. He broke through there, coached, he's coached several different places that were good, that were great when he left. He left them way better than he got them. And then he goes to Bryant, and that one's a great situation because Paul Calley left that program in pretty good shape. And now when Buck got that job, they're used to winning, but they were used to winning kind of and getting to the state championship semifinals or that level, but really getting over the top against the Northwest Arkansas programs. Buck really, I'm not saying Paul Calley didn't, because he really made that team a strong weightlifting bunch. They were strong physically. You looked out on the field, they looked the part. That when he took them over, started dominating Benton and all those kind of people. Well, when Buck took them over, he just lifted them to that level Buck's done everywhere he's been. And before long, they were whipping the Northwest Arkansas teams, and it became Bryant and North Little Rock really as the two powerhouse teams, Cabot just below them in that division. Well, anyway, I don't know if I've answered your question or not, but the jobs that Buck has done all through his coaching career, and even when I think he was at Little Rock Christian for his short time as an assistant, and brought just some of that toughness Buck's always had. Listen, Buck's had that since he was a little kid, and Buck's kid now, he's my nephew's same age, they're buddies and everything. I could see that same toughness in that little kid too. He's not a little kid; he's going to be a big football player here soon enough. But that. There's just something about football, and you've been there too. It. I mean, I don't care what anybody says about the game, and it's fun out there and play 7-on-7 and throw it in the yard and all that. But football on the field on Friday night or Saturday, it's a tough man's game. I'm sorry. There's no getting around that. You got to have a measure of toughness. You got to have that from your coach, which I believe Sam Pittman does for the Razorbacks. I believe guys like Buck James do it on the high school level at such a high level. It's just, you look back through the history, and when you look back at the history of all the great high school coaches in Arkansas, whether it's going to be, Wilson Matthews, my gosh, what a tough man he was. He'd scare you when I was around him at Fayetteville. When he coached Little Rock Central in the 50s, I mean, they were the powerhouse. There's just a measure of this toughness that comes down from the top, and you got to have it. You got to have leadership. I mean, it's not just being tough and some guy who's maybe just mean. I don't mean it that way. I just mean, physically boys to match up to the guys you're playing and meet them head on, and then the leadership, and not give up, and all the things you and I've always heard all our lives. Buck had good coaches when he grew up, and he's taken that and exemplified it himself. And I don't know if I answered your question at all here, but that's the Buck James I know, and I could go on and spend a couple hours just on that. But boy, they got a great thing going out there.
And they do, and they're competing for their fourth straight state championship this year. Yeah. Just winning one is a once in a lifetime opportunity, but to win three straight, not competing for the fourth, yeah. He's doing.
Especially when you have turnover. It's not like when you can go out and recruit a class of 25 guys like at Alabama every year and make sure you have a quarterback. I mean, he had a great guy in Ledbetter the last few years. It's gone on, I guess, to college, and they're not as good this year as they were last year. There's no way they were going to be, but they're right there still as probably the odds on. It'll be competitive. It'll be exciting. I'd love to see, another Bryant Fayetteville matchup maybe, but not to take anything away from these guys. North Little Rock is,
still good.
Their play this year as the season's gone on. So I'm excited. I'm going to be going to some of these playoff games, and I can't wait to see how it shapes up.
I am too. And I think there's a lot of good teams this year. Of course, North Little Rock has done really well after the Conway loss. And then, of course, Conway, who's been, I think, probably the most surprising team in the state, and has marked themselves as probably a contender for the state championship. I know they lost to Bryan Friday, but they were up by 3 scores. And if they could just make up mistakes and continue following their game plan, Conway can win a state championship this year. And of course, it's Fayetteville.
Kind of that believe, and it's that belief. Can they believe when they're up 3 scores? We've got you. We're going to win. That's where they've got to get over the top. That's where Buck was able to take Bryant and get over the top against Fayetteville and some of those Northwest Arkansas teams. It's like, convince them that they're beat, and he did. I mean, that's what Bryant was able to do. That power shift, Northwest Arkansas, where it's been for so many years, down to Central Arkansas, has been pretty fascinating to watch here in the last decade or so.
Yeah, and it's so fun to just see, whether it's high school athletics or our Razorbacks being so good in the state of Arkansas, seeing a lot of great athletes. It's really fun for me, at least. And so I love to see just the exposure and the growth we're seeing in the state of Arkansas in athletic. It's really fun for me. Jim, I really want to get to you now. A Pine Bluff native. Talk about growing up in Pine Bluff, and where did your interest from sports come? Was that something that you were you in love at a young age, or were you kind of a late bloomer with it? And what made you specifically fall in love with sports?
Well, I'm sure, other than I know my mother's brothers who lived in Virginia and were big Washington Redskins. It seemed like every summer we'd go and see them, and their love of whatever sport it was, baseball, football. I mean, that kind of rubbed off on me, but I don't know. It just seemed kind of natural. And the thing was, I mean, to be honest with you, I was always kind of on the low end of getting picked. If I wasn't the guy I picked for the, kickball team, I wasn't the first by any stretch. And, it was always hard for me to actually get to compete. But I sat on the bench a lot all the way up through years. I mean, I got to get in late. It never changed. It's like the harder you work, you said, well, it's going to pay off for you. But some people are born slow and short. Some people are to pay attention to what's going on and then learn to write about it. I guess that's where I was, because, but I loved it. I still loved football. I remember everything that ever happened. But our town was a big sports town. Pine Bluff was a soccer town when I was growing up. Everybody knew the Zebras. Everybody went to the games. My dad was really big into basketball, so maybe that's why I liked basketball. He didn't push me into anything anyway. So if I tried to do anything that more than anything as I got older, basketball. Again, basketball doesn't play real well for short, small, and slow, whatever. But I was still involved. The coach, I kind of reached a point there where the coaches were going, man, Jim, we love your effort and everything, but and I want you to be a part of the program. How about being our team statistician or whatever? Just be with us there, because we know that you pay attention to us, and we can trust you with the keys to the gym or what. You know what I'm saying? It was like not everybody was blessed with getting to play. So that's my story. Is that and I was around basketball more than anything in school. So and I had a crossroads where I could have continued to do that when Coach Eddie Sutton took over at Arkansas, and they were like, hey, we got spots for managers, and just being around the team. But at that point, I kind of was ready to just sit in the stands and be a fan. But so I guess that's where my love for it just always has been. I always paid attention to the coaches, probably more than the starters did. The starters would ask me, what did he say, and all that. So I always felt like I connected with coaches, whether I was just, first guy off the bench or last guy off the bench, or keep hats and the keys for Coach Bridges for basketball, or listening to Coach Sutton in press conferences and him, talking to me privately just about the games, and, learning more about college basketball through him, and Coach Holtz with football as I got older. Holtz is very open and honest with me. Coach Broyles, gosh, he was the best. I mean, we had a lot of good visits there. We had a lot of good visits later when I went back to Fayetteville as a reporter for the Gazette. And we just had a lot of, wasn't coaching me. I mean, he was just the AD, but we had some good visits. So I just tried to learn everything about the game. So there's plenty of people who can go to me and say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. You've never played college football. And that's true. I mean, you can say that. I wasn't on the field playing for college football, but I did everything I could to learn everything I could about what the coaches want, what they expect out of the players, and what you're seeing out there on the field. So I tried to put that to use and try to use that as my professionalism toward the people who either read me or listen to me or whatever.
I love that response. Then you
Right.
saying that, that we, as whether you're a writer, journalist, anchor, anything, that you're not on the field, so you can't really speak, or you're not on the course, you can't really speak, so you don't know what's going on. But if you're really devoted to this, I feel like you're doing your best to be there, to learn everything about the ins and outs about it. And you said that, and it just made me smile, because I really do believe that. We're not there, and so we're going to have different perspectives than someone who's out there doing their craft. But it's like we love to just get inside details that other people may be afraid to go get, and that's the best thing about what we're doing. And so I do love that answer. And I asked this question because I know you have a lot of background and history. What, in your opinion, whether it's collegiate or high school or even the pros, what has been like some of the significant changes that you've seen in sports, from maybe your time growing up to now? And also, was there a player that you kind of just fell in love with, whether it was any sport that always made you fell in love with that game?
Well, gosh, it's been a lot of them, but and each change has been a little different. I think speed changed so much with football and basketball as I grew up. I mean, the faster team's always going to win. Ironically, that used to be true in baseball and is not now. Baseball has changed the other direction, and they've really preached, especially in 15 years, not during the steroid thing. I'm not really talking about that, but the style of hitting for baseball has changed so much that it's all about getting the 3-run homer. So it's become station to station. When I grew up, guy I fell in love with, if you want to put it that way, was 10, was Lou Brock for the Cardinals. First time that I even found out that the St. Louis Cardinals were on the radio, and I would listen to them darn near every night. So that was another thing that influenced me as a child, Cardinal baseball. And because the first night I ever heard him on our local radio station, he hits a 3-run homer. And you know Harry Carey, how exciting he was to listen to. He was the play-by-play guy for the Cardinals then. And that, I'm telling you, there's something about the right announcer that can just bring you in and make you love the game. And Harry Carey made me love Lou Brock and Bob Gibson and the guys who were great then. So speed has been the biggest change. Football has changed because there's always been a movement in the rule changes to boost offense. I think every sport has done that. It's always been, as more and more people have gone to the games and as they watch attendance either go up or down, the rule changes in every sport have been geared first toward what will get the most fans and TV eyes and advertisers involved in our game. So with football, the changes have all been offense, whether pros and definitely college. When I was a kid and even through the 70s, the way you blocked for pass protection is nothing like what's allowed today. So that opened up a whole game. You would probably not have been able to take these offenses. Everybody says, well, how come they didn't do this stuff back in the 60s and 70s? You know, why didn't they throw it 50 times? A few teams actually did. Tulsa was a big air it out university in the 60s and played Arkansas when not many people did. Baylor under Don Truell and Terry Southall probably threw the ball twice as much as anybody in the Southwest Conference. But really, the rules didn't allow you, the blocking rules, the protection rules didn't allow you to do what you can do now. And as far as spreading things out, lots of people have tried spreading their line gaps, putting receivers out here and there. You've had different innovations all through it. I just the other night watching some ESPN Classic game where they're just both teams are running they weren't running the wishbone, but they're running option. And you don't see a lot of that anymore. But I think what's changed is that every rule change has benefited offense. Basketball, same way. The 3-point shot, that's changed the same team that we went to the Final Four with in 1978. You had to given that team the 3-point shot, they might have won it all because, you know, Ron Brewer and Marvin Delph could shoot with anybody. If you go back and watch the 94 championship team by the Razorbacks, they shot awfully well, but if you watch other games, teams didn't still, even with a closer 3-point line they have now, teams didn't have everybody on the court shooting 3-pointers. You might have had 2 guys that were your designated 3. Arkansas had 6 or 7 guys on that team that could consistently hit a 3-point shot. Now, kids have grown up with these rules. I think when you grow up with the rules you have, then that makes the next generation that much better. So that's why we see gobs and gobs of perimeter players. Nick Smith from Sylvan Hills, he's 6'6". He would have played, you know, center or power forward on our high school team. I mean, he's a guard. I mean, and those guys shoot threes. Everybody shoots them. They grew up with that. I probably won't, sadly, but I would love to know what happens with the 20 years from here. You know, what happens with that generation being with everything that there is. So that's what I've seen change most about those 3 major sports, but it's all about power and speed. Golf, tennis, just about everything I've watched for 50 years, power and speed have been the big changes. Golf's all about power. Tennis has way bigger rackets and power than they played with in the McEnroe, Connors, Borg era. I mean, everything is, and it's sad when I think, man, I'm talking about 40 years ago. When I was your age and somebody had said something about 4 years ago, I would have thought it was the beginning of time. So it's funny for me now to say it to you and you're going, gosh, he's talking about prehistoric when they had the football was more oblong and they played it like rugby and all that kind of thing.
Oh, and I appreciate that because I kind of tend to, I'm not going to say I just know everything because there are a lot of things I don't know, but I loved Lou Brock, and I'm a big Cardinals fan. And I think I became a Lou Brock fan because I'm fond of anyone from the state of Arkansas. You do really good things in your sports, and he's from El Dorado. I love this game, and I'm a Cardinals fan now. I am a lot younger, and I was tenured to Matt Holliday, I was a big fan of Matt Holliday, which is why I became a
Yeah.
Cardinals fan.
Yeah.
First off, God rest Lou Brock. He passed away last year, and
You lost Gibby too, lost them
yeah,
both same
and
year.
and it was tough, and I didn't grow up with that, but I still knew a lot about Lou Brock and Bob Gibson as well, and it's just kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like they had a lot of passion for St. Louis. They really did. It
Mhm.
wasn't just a team they were on. They cared about the city of St. Louis. They cared about the franchise,
No doubt they did. Yeah.
and I feel like they left their mark on this current team, this current generation of whoever comes and becomes a Cardinal player. And it's just, I love to see guys, especially from the state of Arkansas, leave that mark. And so I love that answer from you. I want to ask you, how did you initially get into writing? I know you have a lot of background with it, whether it be in Pine Bluff commercial, KTV, but how did you get into writing, and when did you kind of really get to the next level with it?
Well, here's the goofy answer for you. Uh, when I was a little kid, and I'm saying again, this is probably 10 or 11, um, and I guess I'm illustrating this to tell you, I think I was born for it. I got this little thing that they made that called a Cub Press or something, where you could actually make your own page, a newspaper page. You could write your own. Let me tell you, it wasn't worth the time you spent on it. You put the little letters in, you had to do all this, and then you could roll your page. And then we would have little football games in the yard. I would write about them afterward, and I'd send to everybody. I said this as if it was a story. And the reason I was probably doing that is because I mentioned my uncles. They were huge fans of reading the Washington Post, especially on the weekends or after games. So I grew up as a little kid reading that. I grew up reading Orville Henry and the Arkansas Gazette. So all that influenced me to want to write, even before you really kind of hit those formative years. I wanted to write. In junior high, we had a little junior paper, and no one even asked me. It wasn't like you volunteered to get on it. The teacher just decided who she wanted writing, and I wasn't asked to write for that newspaper. I mean, and I loved sports then. I could have wrote about our junior high football, but and it didn't hurt me. It just like inspired me to keep working at it and to keep. And I ended up being the first junior to ever be on our high school newspaper at Pine Bluff. So, and I got asked by the sport, got to know me pretty good through my managing and statistician role with the high school basketball team to provide, I got to know him and he put me to work before I was ever even out of high school. When I went to college, I already had a job with them, with a newspaper there. So, and I worked at Fayetteville in college for 4 years, it was for no money. Like they said, it was for beer money. And I really didn't drink that much beer, but I covered every sport for the Pine Bluff commercial in Fayetteville as a student. So all those things all rolled into one, and it just kind of happened. And my goal in college wasn't to be a writer. I actually majored in chemistry, and I thought I might actually go into a healthcare field. I never really thought about that I would do this as an adult later. I didn't dream about working for Sports Illustrated. If I dreamed about anything, it was that I'd work for the Washington Post. But those kind of things you just don't get those kind of jobs. But it ended up, I went to work for the Pine Bluff commercial with the idea that in a couple of years I might go back to college and work on that master's. And basically 2 years became approximately 41 now. I'm working on 41 years of still not going back to school and getting that master. So that you can see it wasn't just one decision, but this is how it happened. And I don't regret it one bit.
Jim, one of the biggest things for me, and my listeners can attest to this, I talk about my family a lot because I feel like that's probably the most important thing other than God for me. And I'm not anywhere without them. And I want you to just talk about what it was like for you growing up and what were some of the things you learned growing up and now that you're able to teach, the younger generation, now that you're more wiser and more intelligent.
Well, I had the same kind of what you just said. I had a great. I'm an Episcopalian, although I don't. I'm not going as often as I wish. With COVID, everything seemed to change everything, and I haven't been back to church as much as probably I'd like. But I grew up in Pine Bluff as an Episcopalian. We had a great church there. A lot of my friends that I still either keep up with on Facebook or whatever was from that church. My first preacher, the first reverend that I had there was almost Pope-like to me. I mean, it's kind of that guy you just think he's just bigger than life, sort of. And certainly I learned a lot at that church. And my mom and the way she raised me, she was a Catholic turned Episcopalian, so I had a lot of that background with her. So I'm not sure what I'd tell people now as far as my how I grew up, except I just had so many people that were so influential in my life. We had a housekeeper when I was a kid. This is probably not unusual for a southern town, for a white kid in the 1960s in the southern town. Everybody had a housekeeper coming by there, and she was even more my family than my family was. She lived to be 106. I spoke at her funeral a few years ago. She was, you know, like a third grandmother. I mean, it was just the things she told me. You and I don't have enough time to talk about it. I mean, from when I was 3 to when I was 30. Talk about the Cardinals. She had lived in St. Louis. We loved to watch those occasional televised Cardinals games together over at her house. Her house was a caddy corner from the old boys club in Pine Bluff. It was used to be just boys club, now boys and girls clubs. But back then it was just the boys. And my parents might be out of town, my mother gone off somewhere, and I'd walk across the street and just stay with Camille and Kay there in Pine Bluff. And I was her granddaughter. Just stay at the house for a while before she'd drive me back home. And the things I learned from her, I wish I could write a book. I mean, kind of like the Tuesdays with Maury. There were probably some things that if I put my head down and thought about it, there's probably, evenings with Camille. I mean, that were life lessons that probably the average person out there, I don't know if it would mean that much to them or not, but it means so much in my heart. And to tell that to somebody, it's just hard for me to do, but the things that I took from people were, and her too, is don't give up, but when you're tired, get your rest, don't avoid your rest. You can have coconut cream pie, but you got to eat your vegetables first, eat well, get your rest, push on through. There'll be disappointments. Fight out, don't get down on those. Just know that she never said every dog has his day, but I think in some form or fashion, everybody should take that into consideration. You will have your day. It ain't going to be every day. And I think every football team, every sporting team out there, every person, everybody can take a football lesson or a sports lesson to heart with their own life and know that, every day you're not going to miss that poor kick that kid missed at the end of the game the other day for Mississippi State. Right down the road, he's going to make one and win a game. So you're going to get down. You can't help it, but don't let your business, don't let your life, don't let wherever you're working have you down, not thinking you'll ever get up, because you will. You'll fight through it, but go home, get your rest, eat well, and come back the next day fighting harder. I don't know what else I've learned in my life other than that. That's what I have tried to tell my kid, and unfortunately, he's like every other kid that's not quite 20 yet. He thinks I don't know what I'm talking about, but maybe 20 years from now, he'll remember that I said this and say it to his kid.
Jim, and I asked this to kind of bestow on what you just said. When you're going off to college, I feel like college is like the first testimony of finding yourself. You're on your own for the first time, no parents, no one to you. And so how did what you learned from, growing up help you prepare for college? And also, why did you choose to go to college where you went?
I went to Fayetteville, went to the University of Arkansas. Actually, I mentioned Camille just a minute ago. She's actually the one that saw me off that day. My parents were working. I
Mhm.
think about kids today, including myself with my son. We took my kids to college. Most every parent I know takes their kid to college. They don't, you know, go to work and say, hey, well, we'll see you in a few months. And I'm not knocking my parents one iota. That's just how it was. It was
Mhm.
Camille that sent me. It made sure I had everything in the car, and she's the one that shed a tear when I was leaving school. That's how it was. That's how I know it and remember it. And like I said, she was almost like a third grandmother. But I didn't know a lot when I went to college. If I had to do it over again, I would have probably gone to some kind of a prep school first. Because when I went to college, I was not prepared, and that was even though my high school had prepared me with several classes that were college level courses. Those are the courses. I actually went up to Fayetteville to university and aced them, so I'd already had them basically. But and I didn't party. My first year in college, I hope this does mean something to somebody who listens. And I think about this when a lot of these freshman athletes, you see, well, he's entered the portal or whatever. I don't bad or I don't begrudge any kid that young that maybe uh, picks the university or picks a school and then thinks they're, man, I mean, I'm uneasy. I probably had the worst year of my life. My first semester in school, just I wasn't prepared for that. This is a day and age. I don't know, maybe kids are better prepared. Maybe they go through the anxiety earlier now because life is tough, even for the junior high and high school kids. I know what my son has gone through before he went to college. He's only gone off Conway, so he's 30 minutes away and comes home a lot. I was in Fayetteville, and I'm from Pine Bluff, and a lot of my friends loved it, had a great first year. I went up there thinking, yeah, you're probably getting a fraternity and all this, and I couldn't even make my grades. And it wasn't, and I not, trust me, I was not out there, at Maxine's or any of those
Mhm.
clubs on Dixon and just not, and I just was not coping with where I was. I spent a lot of time at the university library. My father won the football games, and some of his friends, they drove down Dixon Street, and there used to be a club there. I don't think it's there anymore, called the Library Club. And they just joked at me. He goes, now I know the library you've been hanging at. And we laughed about it. But no, I was at the library, but I was reading about everything except what my classes were about. There's so much to read. And I'm an inquisitive guy. I'm curious about everything. And all of a sudden December rolled around and I was not ready for my 5 hour history final or my Western Civ final or any of that. So my lesson for anybody is uh, consider that first year where you go. Consider that if you're not ready for the rigors of college, which will you fast, understand this is something they didn't tell me. Understand that the first year of college or the first year of law school or the first year of medical, what I found out from everybody I've talked to and what I went through myself, they're weeding you out. Same thing with football. When I talked to my friend that played for the Razorbacks when they used to have 150 on the team, the first year, those scholarships you got, they don't do this anymore. They don't have the players to do it. But back then, they weeded you out. The whole goal was we're going to find out which few of our 50 scholarships and our walk-ons are willing to pay the price. Well, the thing is, college has stayed the same way. You take that course with 400 kids in a large auditorium, they don't care individually. They're weeding you out. If you're not willing to study, they don't care. I mean, you're out, you're gone. They're not going to waste the, you've probably been through it yourself, but it's like, that's something I wasn't told when I went. So hopefully this is not news for everybody who might be watching this or who might be a freshman or who might be starting college, but understand that your first year of wherever you're at, it's geared to weed you out. Or let's look on the positive. It's geared to find who's willing to pay the price to succeed and go further. If you're not, then you get weeded out. But I'm saying that they care about stays with it and progresses up the ladder. And if you don't want to, they're not going to waste time with you. And this happens a lot in life. This happens a lot in the profession a lot of people go to. They may go to work for a large company as a underling, or you might be at a law school and you go to work for a big firm as an associate, and you're dumped on with a ton of work. And it's first year medical school is the same way. Can you handle the load? If you can't, the ones that aren't committed are gone. To make medical school, you got to pass a lot of, tests anyway. You got to pass, used to anyway, you get to pass MCAT and go through tons of other stuff. But that's kind of what life kind of is trying to do to you. Everybody is trying to find who's committed to do the job. If you're not, you pushed off to the side and they move on. Boy, that sounds real cynical, and I'm sorry we went that way, but that's kind of been my experience in my life.
Don't apologize. I'm enjoying this a lot. I don't know if anyone told you, you're a really good storyteller. And
Thank
so
you.
I know we're getting short on time, so I don't want to hold you too long, but I've got 3 more questions for you.
Sure. I'll promise to answer them quicker than I've answered any of those.
Don't do you. I promise you, I'm enjoying this. And that's the point, is for you to speak you. And my first question is, getting into writing, what has been, I would say, your most enjoyable place you've been at, whether that's when you were starting off or even in the middle of your career, even now? And no shade on this one, but what's been like the place you kind of least enjoyed?
My favorite year, the best year I ever had, and probably my peak year of, I was already probably 32, but I really got a lot of stuff that ended up being published by USA Today too. It's when the Gazette was owned by Gazette, and I got real lucky and first of all, it always is another life lesson is make sure you network out there, because who I knew is what got me to the Gazette. It was the Gazette then. I know some people don't even realize it was 2 papers at that time, but in the course of working there, in the course of working there, they were going to hire somebody else for this one position. And it's the first time I really kind of got mad about it, or not internally. Don't be afraid to toot your horn and ask, why are you wanting to hire that person when you've got me here? And I had one person who'd been a good friend of mine for a few years, and he was working there. He was working at the Gazette, and I told him just exactly how I put it. I said, why are they caring about hiring that guy when they've got me on the staff for that job and I'm perfect for it? And he went to bat for me, and it worked out. And the job was actually being the Southwest Conference beat writer. Jim Bailey had done it for years and years, and he kind of moved. He was getting older and wanted to do more columns and less that. And what this job consisted of was covering the whole Southwest Conference, everybody in there, what was going on, how Arkansas related. I'd go to the Arkansas games, but I would really cover probably the opponent that they were playing. I'd cover that during the week, and it was a great job for me. It's what I was almost pretty much born to do. How I grew up. I grew up reading Bailey. I grew up reading his stuff on the Southwest Conference. So when it came time for me to move into that role, I just felt like I was made for it. I only had that job for like a year or two before they moved me up to Fayetteville to be the beat man for the Razorbacks. So I really only had that for a short time. But I did get to interview guys like Andre Ware, and my story on him was the promotion story, kind of, not too moan horn here at all. I don't mean it that way, but he wasn't quite being talked about for the Heisman Trophy yet. But when my story ran and I'd interviewed John Jenkins, the coach down there, and interviewed Andre, it ran. USA Today picked it up and ran it as their big story on there. And I'd like to think it helped a little bit in getting him some notice. But as it turned out, the next few weeks, he would, continue to throw for 600 yards, that kind of stuff. And he won the Heisman Trophy that year. That was something because I kept telling people how good he was, at least on the college level. I know his pro career wasn't his college year, just like Klingler that followed him. But that was my favorite year. I mean, that being able to do that, sort of be my own boss, but get my stuff in the paper, go on the tour of the Southwest Conference 2 years in a row and meet all those guys, a lot of connections with the guys in Texas. And it still is my favorite year. This job at the Game and Fish Commission has been my favorite job for the people I've worked with. It's been a great way. And this is probably going to be my last full-time job before retirement. I don't know how long it will last, but there's no newspaper jobs worth going back to. I mean, that's all behind. And I really love the people here and the things I get to do, put a magazine out. I don't get to quite write as much because we just don't put that much out. I used to write 2 and 3 stories a day when I was working as a daily newspaper guy. And some of these feature stories I had to churn out in hours, and it's not quite done that way anymore. Worst or most, I haven't had a worse job, I don't think. I've had jobs where the wrong people took ownership of the place I was working and made it bad. Early on in my career, that was pretty bad. But again, setbacks, you just keep plugging and something good happens. I've been awfully lucky, I guess, because something's always happened good, when it didn't seem like things were that great. I did have a difficult job when I was working at the Northwest Arkansas Times. The Gazette closed. I worked for them, did a lot of freelance for their sports department, got to know Mike Vaccaro real well. He's up in New York now, one of the top columnists up in New York City. But he was there, and Dudley Dawson was there. Ed Horn was there. We had a great staff of people working there. They hired me because I was kind of needing a full-time job after basketball season ended that year. They hired me as news editor. It was fun. It was fun to do. But they went to morning. They had been an afternoon paper. All of a sudden they switched to morning, but without the manpower or the everything to kind of do it with. And man, we were putting out gigantic papers. I mean, not a lot of ads, full pages, 12 pages at a time. That's hard to really do in a short amount of time and get it out without just driving yourself crazy with the pressure of deadline. And I don't know, some guys are cut out for that. For me, I knew I really wasn't. And as soon as a job opened down here in Little Rock for Arkansas Business, which was a weekly, I could handle a weekly with that kind of pressure better than a daily. So that was the hardest place to work, was when the Northwest Arkansas Times, this is before the Democrat had bought them. They were still their own paper. They had consultants coming in all the time. They went to morning. It just really became it became a pressure I didn't kind of really want to deal with, but you end up having those kind of things. The people were great. I mean, I've been lucky. Most of the people I've worked with have been really pros, and I've learned a lot.
My second question, and you kind of talked about it, and I would be bare myself if I didn't mention where you're at right now, which is the Game and Fish Commission. How did you get in? How did you get involved with that? And just talk about what you do on a day-to-day basis, and again, how much you do enjoy it, which is something you did go into.
Well, again, connections have a whole lot to do with things in your life. Everybody's sure they always network, treat everybody as well as you can, and sometimes those will come help you. I was freelancing after Arkansas Sports 360 went under. I freelanced for a lot of different publications, and one of them I was doing, and I still do some freelance work on the side and a lot of things for Arkansas Times. But I was doing, I've known those guys forever, since 1992. Arkansas Times actually owned Arkansas Business at the time, so I've known those owners. So I was putting out for them a publication called Arkansas Wild. It was, I think it may have been 4 times a month. I don't think it was more than that. It may have been 6 times. I mean, not 4 times a month. It may have been 6 times a year. I don't even remember now, but the good thing was I was dealing a lot with the people over here with my publication. I was to either, ideas for things I might cover that they were doing. And the good news is that one of my best friends over here. So kind of out of the blue, I didn't even know it was open. They never really contacted me because they didn't think I'd really be that interested in it. But my son, I enjoyed freelancing for the period I did because my son was growing up in that era, and I like to be around him a lot. I like to be home. I like to, have my own schedule and still be able to do the things I did with him, whether it was sports he played, that kind of stuff. So really, I hit this point in 2016 where it's like, well, okay, I saw just out of the blue they were looking to fill this position that I have now, and saw it on Facebook, and I just contacted my friends. Said, "Are y'all looking for somebody? Are you interested?" I said, "Well, yeah, I kind of am." So, well, you know how it goes. Well, I said, "Yeah, I kind of want to get back to full-time work now that my son's, doesn't need me around anymore. Dad doesn't know anything." So I came down here and I got the job, and all of that was, again, doing, and to tell you the truth, I did Arkansas Wild, which is their Arkansas Times publication, but my history, my background, I think you've gathered, but right now it's pretty vast, pretty wide as far as my likes, things I've done. I've always hunted. I always hunted for ducks. I always went dove hunting, fished all the time back in the 1980s through the 90s. I don't know, didn't have as much time after that, but I'd always been involved with the outdoors. My brother is probably, if he could write, he'd be the person in this job because he knows everything about the outdoors, and he's eat up with it. I wasn't necessarily eating up with it, but I had a great background and exposure to it. I hunt with him and different people a lot. So my background of loving outdoors, my background of knowing what the Game and Fish Commission did, what I could do to help them, it all fell into place. I mean, it just like, again, man, it's like, spiritual luckiness or something. Somebody's looking after me. Somebody has really been looking after me for a long, long time. And Camille told me that. I told you, I'm telling you, the woman had such an effect on me. She was my living guardian angel. She always told me I had a guardian angel. Somebody was looking after me. I've been awfully lucky. That's all I can say. It's not going to answer your question, but it's what it is.
This is my last question. And I ask this every guest I do because I feel like it's really beneficial. whether you can answer it either way. I say this because it's kind of like a two-part question, but what is the legacy you want to leave behind, or what are the things that maybe once you're gone, you want others to know that maybe you didn't get to express too much about yourself?
Hmm.
And it could be anything at all.
Well, I think the people who know me, good or bad, for good or bad or whatever, know what I'm about. I think I don't hide anything in there. Sometimes it might not be what I want out there. Sometimes I might, be a little bit high strung acting and, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I mean, you ask a question, it's kind of funny, almost about, um, for reasons we don't have to go into. I've thought a lot because I'm older, and I thought about, and I've seen, had a really good friend of mine pass away about a month ago that we were in college together. And, you think about your obituary, what's your obituary going to say if somebody does take time to write something out? I mean, because you're probably, now my father-in-law actually wrote, I think he wrote what he wanted.
Mhm.
He was a writer. I didn't know him until I met my wife, but he owned a newspaper in Warren and everything. He wrote pretty much his own obituary, and I don't know if I'll go to that extreme, but you think, what are people going to say about you? When are they going to say anything that you would think they're going to say? Did I make that kind of impact? Was my legacy enough that what I envisioned somebody in the pulpit maybe standing over my coffin or whatever, are they going to say the things I really think they should be saying? Or is it just going to be a laugh-a-thon about how Jim humored everybody with the stupid things he did, and that kind of thing? So I don't know. Actually, as I've gotten a little older here, you start thinking about those kind of things. I really haven't really thought though about what kind of legacy I would leave, other than if they'll sit there and go, Jim was a good friend, good father, worked his tail off in his jobs, took the good with bad, didn't make a lot of money, but didn't whine too much about it, was awfully blessed. Tell you, he was blessed right to the end. And, and I don't know, you got me, first time you got me really more speechless than the other questions, but that's just, I haven't really thought about, any, I have a friend of mine who's always saying, she's got this connection. She was going to, there's this Writers Hall of Fame thing that she's in, where a bunch of people I know are in. She goes, I'm going to get you into that. Well, you don't have to, don't worry about that. I mean, I'm not after, being listed in a Hall of Fame, or, the handful of maybe trophies I got for best story in the Gazette, or, I don't, that's all great, but just, I just hope that people will know, man, that dude had a heck of a mind for Razorback sports. He could remember everything. He could tell you, he could explain to you what you saw and you didn't know, or he could further explain to you why what you saw happened, and he told it truthfully. He didn't have an agenda. He didn't always make everybody happy with what he said, because he wanted to tell the truth. He didn't want to sugarcoat it and make you think, if the officials had have been better, we would have won. It's that he told the truth. He was a good father and a good husband, a good son, good brother, good uncle, good grandson, good friend. All those things would, they say that about me, I'm going to be awfully happy, wherever I am after all that.
This is, I would add something. I think you're really positive. You just seem really happy, and you have a positive mindset, and I think that can really go a long way for anyone that's listening. And I really do appreciate you. And I'm gonna do something right now which I've never done before on the episode, which is give a live invitation. I would love to have you back one day.
I would be on here anytime you want me.
I
And
appreciate
we
that.
can talk about, you can think about what you might have wanted to ask and didn't. I'll answer anything. I just loved every second. I mean, it's really helped me. Getting to share this with you has brought back some really positive memories. I'm at the happiest time of my life, believe it or not. I want to tell you, I'm going to share one really thing with you. My mother is sitting in not intensive care, but she broke her femur the other day, which is not good when you're about a month shy of being 88. And she's got a lot of problems with that. And it's not the best of times, but and certainly that certainly weighs on me. I feel like I'm able to compartmentalize it enough to tell you that my life right now is as good as it could possibly be. And being on your show and getting to meet you and share this with you and talk about people we know and things we both love it's been so meaningful to me today. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you again. This is, and I say this anytime I can talk for anyone from Arkansas, man. I love talking to Arkansas natives and seeing them do great things. But you have really been something else. Your storytelling, your delivery, your positivity has really been shown for me, and I hope everyone that's watching this or listening to this, it's shown on them as well. I really do appreciate that, Mr. Harris. I'm not gonna say when.
Better
I'm gonna
be
keep
Jim
that.
from now on. Now you can't call me Mr. Harris
I'm
anymore.
sorry, Jim. I'm sorry, my man. I'm sorry, Jim.
Come on,
It's a respect thing.
I know I have a couple of years on you, but you can't make me feel like I'm one of the too far from you. Let's put it that way.
Never. And I'll keep it a surprise for you and everyone. I'll let you know. But yeah, I'm gonna get you back on here. I've got some things I still want to talk to you about.
Awesome.
So I just keep in contact.
Fantastic.
Jim, for anyone that may have any questions that maybe I didn't get to here today, would you be willing to put out any social medias that you have so maybe they can follow you, reach you?
You can get me on Twitter at Jim Harris 360 is my Twitter. That goes all the way back to when I was the editor of Arkansas Sports 360. Jim Harris 360. I know it makes no sense now, but that's what it is. Jim.Harris at agfc.ar.gov is my email. Anybody watching this is welcome to email me anytime, and they can say whatever they want. I see everything. Believe me, nothing can be said to me that not good or bad, I guess. And I don't know, Facebook, I'm on there. You probably recognize me by the face. So I think I sent you a picture from one of my Facebooks. So I've got a Facebook that's that's my business one with Game and Fish. I have two. So if you're surprised, if you say, wait, is that guy's twin? No, I've got a personal one that's me in a blue jacket, Jim Harris. And it may be Facebook/the Jim Harris. Sorry, that sounds way bolder than it really is meant. And then the other one is just a Game and Fish Commission Facebook page that I've got, Jim Harris too. So you can get on there and or y'all can read what I write by picking up an Arkansas Wildlife every 2 months, or reading bestofarkansassports.com and some of those others, or THV11.com is also another place too. So I'm all out there.
And I'll link all that as well.
Thanks.
Of course. Any shout outs you want to give to anyone, Jim?
I don't know. I just can't think of anybody right off the bat, except Buck, if you watch this, good luck in the state playoffs. I know you got an open date, I hope, this week to get rested up and then go for another championship. And I sure hope to be there for that final when you do. So, and anybody else from Pine Bluff, spoke to good friend of mine, former Zebra earlier today, Marvin O'Brien, great linebacker there. He's trying to get something going in Pine. Two things. Let me just bother you for just a second. He's wanting to help start a Pine Bluff Zebra Hall of Fame that should have been started years ago. And I'm right there with him. I worked there for years. I grew up there, loved the Zebras. The Zebras should have a Hall of Fame. There's been some fabulous athletes play for be Zebras, and many have gone on to bigger and better things in college and pros. And then certainly shout out from there. The other thing I think it's really cool, he's got a good idea, is to bring all the guys that have been athletic, you want to call them heroes or whatever, that from Central Arkansas, wherever, together for some kind of get together somewhere, have them at a hotel and a big party and some kind of shindig of some sort, just to get together. We don't have a lot of time on this earth, and it's in it. And, you get reminded of that quite often the older you get. So I have, and I think that was really special to do something like that. So that's one I'd like to also give a shout out. He might even see this too, but I hope people look up Marvin O'Brien. If you're watching this, you know me, and you know what he's trying to do, reach out to Marvin. But anyway, other than that, sure down the road, if you do talk to me again, we'll have much more to say. And I'm even going to hope that my mother's feeling better here in a few days. Get her to tune in too. She always likes to watch me on the Hogzone on Channel 11 every Saturday night. So it'll give her something else to be happy about. She needs it right now.
Absolutely. Prayers and love sent to you,
Thank you
for that. And I appreciate you again. I really do. This has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to me. So God bless you, Jim. And thank you for this again. And we wish the best for you. And we'll keep in contact. And it's just been a lot of fun for me. And I shout out to Coach James as well too, for that 4th championship. I'll be there at some games, hopefully. I'm doing my best to get out there.
Good.
But yeah,
if you do, we need to get out there together and watch
we.
it.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun this year. There's a lot of talent, and so it'll be fun. But it's not. They can do it again.
I've never lost my love for high school football and the championship or any of the high school sports, but especially, the sports editor of the big paper here doesn't really go out there. But if that had been me, I would have never not gone to high school football championships. I think they're really the blood of it all. And anyway, I want to go out there with you and watch the championships or watch some of the playoffs.
Absolutely. Well, let's keep in contact with that and see everything that happened. I appreciate you again, Jim. Take care, and wishing the best for you and your family. And thank you again, man. God bless everyone. Take care, y'all.